Mental Fascination by William Walker Atkinson, Chapter 15. Establishing a Mentative Center. We now approach that part of this work in which each individual student is called upon to decide for himself whether or not he wishes to take his place in the world as a live, active center of mentative energy, or whether he wishes to remain a negative, passive, half-alive center. No matter which plan you may choose, you cannot avoid being a center of some kind. The question for you to decide is, what kind of a center do I wish to become? Each individual a center. I have explained in my work on mental magic, and again in the first chapter of the present work, that each individual is a center of life, energy, and force in the great ocean of universal mentative energy. Each individual is a center around which revolves his own world, be that world great or small. The principle is the same in all cases, and each man's world is largely what he makes it, what he attracts to himself. From the time that the child begins to assert the I in him, he begins to create for himself his world. He draws this person and thing and repels that person or thing in accordance with his mental nature, and he is constantly changing his little world according to the growth of his nature. Mental world building. In view of this law of life, does it not become of importance to us to begin to build our mental world with care and with the best possible material? Should we not begin to make ourselves active centers of energy that we may have the necessary power to build strongly and well? Should we not develop within us our powers of attraction that we may draw to us the things, persons, and circumstances that are conducive to our well-being and content? Should we not develop the willpower within us in order to exert that force which is necessary to push our way through the tangled underbrush of life and make a wide path for ourselves? Answer these questions as you will. I have answered them for myself, and you must do the same for yourselves. The important decision. And so I shall proceed with this work with the understanding that you have answered my questions in the affirmative and have decided to create an active mentative center for yourself. If you have decided in the negative, you might as well close this book, for from now on the instruction will be along the lines above indicated. The dual force. Let us pause for a moment and see what forces are combined in this active mentative center. In the first place, we see that the dual aspect of the mental energy manifests itself always. That which we have called the desire, force, and that which we have called the will, power, appear as the two mentative poles. You know this well, for you have studied my main work on mental magic, wherein this point is brought out and illustrated. But here is an aspect of the matter that I did not take the time to bring out at great length in the said book. I allude to the resemblance of the two phases of mentative energy, i.e., desire, force, and will, power, to the physical phenomena of magnetism and electricity, respectively. Physical laws in the mental world. Desire force, like magnetism, manifests in a drawing, pulling, attracting power, while willpower, like electricity, manifests in a pushing, compelling, driving power. Desire, force, like magnetism, tends to draw things inward and to itself, while willpower, like electricity, tends to drive things outward and away from itself. This dual manifestation of energy is seen all through nature in all of its manifold forms and conditions. There is ever the drawing in to a center, and there is ever the pushing outward from the center. And this law manifests upon the mental plane as well as upon the physical plane. Mental electromagnetism. We have heard much of people being magnetic, that is, having the power to attract persons to them, but that is merely one phase of the operation of mentative energy. We do not hear so much about people being electric, and yet the term is just as proper and applicable as the term magnetic. Electric people are the people in whom willpower is strongly developed and manifest. These people get after others and make them do things. They are the active, energetic, forceful men and women who get behind things and push them along. All great leaders possess this phase of energy to a marked degree. The mere mention of the matter to you will cause you to think of instances of people who possess mentative electricity. There are men who are able to make the crowd around them do their bidding. They are able to work their will upon the mass of people. These men are seen to possess a strange power, but very few understand it. It is entirely different from the fascinating, alluring, charming, attractive personality of the magnetic man, for it forces and compels by sheer forces of character and will, instead of drawing and attracting. You will see why I've spoken of these two phases of masculine and feminine respectively when you consider their different manner of manifestation. The electromagnetic individual. But while both of these forms of power, the magnetic and the electric, have their strong points and advantages, I hold that the highly developed individual must have both of these phases developed highly. In short, instead of being merely a very magnetic individual on the one hand, or a very electric individual on the other hand, the ideal man must be an electromagnetic individual. In other words, he must have both sides of his mentative energy highly developed and in full operation. In this way, he is able to manifest a combined influence which will make him a very giant of mentative energy. From theory to practice. Now I have said enough about the theory of the thing. I shall ask you to read over what I have said above several times. In fact, reread it until you thoroughly understand it, and then I shall take you on to the practical work and exercises calculated to develop in you the qualities mentioned. Taking it for granted that you have carefully considered what I have just said, I shall ask you to perform the following exercises, etc. First exercise for realizing the center. Exercise 1. In order to realize the reality of the statement that you are a center of mentative power, you must first enter into a realization of the existence of a great ocean of mentative energy itself. Do not pass over this lightly, for it is most important. You must begin to create a mental picture of the universe as a great ocean of living energy, vibrating with life and force and power. Endeavor to make this mental picture so clear that you can see it with your mind's eye, and until it becomes a reality to you. Picture yourself as alone in the universe and surrounded on all sides with a vibrating, pulsating sea of energy or power. See that all power is locked up in that ocean, and that the ocean exists everywhere. Cut out from your mental field all other persons, things, or conditions. Imagine yourself as alone in the great ocean of power. You must practice frequently upon this mental picture until you are able to visualize it distinctly. This does not mean that you have to actually see it, just as you do this printed page, but that you should be able to actually feel it. You will begin to understand just what I mean after you have practiced this a little. This great ocean of universal power must become real to you, and you must practice until it does so become. The importance of the exercise. The importance of the above exercise may be understood when I tell you that it will be impossible for you to manifest more than a moderate degree of power until you are able to realize yourself as a real center. And it will be impossible for you to realize yourself as such a center until you realize the existence of the ocean of power itself. For how can you think of yourself as a center of power in an ocean of power until you realize the existence of the ocean itself? The universal ocean of mentative energy contains within itself all the power, force, and energy that there is. It is the source from which all forms of energy arise. It is filled with an infinite number of tiny centers of energy, of which you are one. And in the degree that you draw upon it for strength, so will you receive strength. By all means, endeavor to clearly visualize the great mentative ocean, for it is the source of all the force with which you are filled and which you hope to acquire. Enter into this great realization, friends, for it is the first step to power. Second exercise for realizing the center. Exercise 2. The second exercise, which will tend to increase your vibration as a center of force, is as follows. Picture yourself clearly as a center of force in the mentative ocean. While seeing the ocean on all sides of you, you must see yourself as the center of it. Do not be frightened at this idea, for it is based on the truth. The highest occult teaching informs us that the great mentative ocean has its center everywhere and its circumference nowhere. That is, that being infinite in space, there is no finite spot that is really its center, and yet, on the other hand, every point of activity may be called its center. Being extended in every direction infinitely, its circumference is non-existence. Therefore, you are entitled and justified in considering yourself as a center of the ocean of power. Each individual is such a center, and each has his world circling and revolving around him. Some have a small world, and some have mighty ones. There are centers so mighty and exalted that the human mind cannot grasp their importance. But even the tiniest point of activity is a center in itself. So hesitate not, but begin to form a mental picture of yourself as a center of power. A focal point of force. Practice this exercise until you can clearly feel yourself as a center of power. You must learn to think of yourself as a focal point of force in the great mentative ocean. Just as the great body of electricity manifests itself in tiny points of activity, so does the mentative energy so express itself in you, who are a point of activity within itself. In urging you to perfect yourself in this realization, I would impress upon you the fact, known to all advanced occultists, that in the measure of your realization of this real nature of the ego will be the measure of the power possessed by you. All of the strong men of our times, and of all ages, had this realization intuitively or instinctively. That is, although they did not know the philosophy or science of the matter, they still felt and feel this sense of the power of the ego in themselves, which gives them the confidence to do things and the willpower and desire force to carry out their undertakings. It is this feeling of inherent strength that makes men strong and successful and positive, and this feeling and realization may be developed and unfolded within anyone, providing he wants it sufficiently hard. By the exercise of your desire and will, you may build up this realization of power, and in the building up there will come to you a constantly increasing stream of desire and will. And the measure of your expression will be the measure of your impression from the source of all positive impression. Third exercise for realizing the center. Exercise 3. The third exercise consists in the realization of the nature of the force. This force energy or power with which you are being filled and which you are now attracting toward your center consists of the electrical manifestation of willpower and the magnetic manifestation of desire force. These two constitute the dual phases of the one force, and therefore you must begin to realize that these qualities are within you in order that you may be able to express the same, and thus gain the addition and increased force that comes to those who express the same. You must begin to realize that you have a will which is capable of impressing itself on the things, persons, and circumstances of your world, and you must begin to realize that you have a desire which attracts to you the things, people, and circumstances of your world, and which, in fact, draws to you the very material form which your world is made. When you realize this dual force within you, it will begin to express itself automatically. The act of realization causes the mental machinery to begin to work smoothly and effectively. Therefore, picture to yourself this dual force within you. See yourself as influencing and acting upon the world around you. See yourself as a power in the land, and also see yourself as an attracting force, drawing to you that which you need and want and require, consciously and unconsciously. Picture yourself as an electromagnetic individual. You are an individual because you are a center of power. You are electromagnetic because you possess the electric will and the magnetic desire. A strong statement. Carry with you this thought constantly and repeat it often to yourself, and you will find it a source of strength. You will find the strength pouring into you when you say or think it. When you feel weak or when you feel the need of additional strength, use this statement of strength. I am a living electromagnet. And when you say it or think it, you must picture to yourself just what you mean by the statement, hence the importance of knowing just what is meant. Do not pass over this statement of strength as unimportant, but try it in actual practice, and you will soon see what a battery of strength it will be for you, and those around you will soon become aware of a new sense of power within you. Don't lean on others. Don't let others lean on you. Keep this statement to yourself. Do not invite the ridicule of those around you by telling them the source of your strength. Do not bother about them. If they are individuals themselves, they will understand without being told. And if they are not, why, all the telling in the world would not make it clear to them. Hoe your own row and mind your own business, and let them do the same. No one can build up his individuality except from within, and each must work out his own salvation and climb the ladder of attainment for himself. And the sooner that people learn this, the better will it be for all. Don't be a leaner or a leaning post. Don't lean on anyone else, and don't let anyone lean on you. Live your own life and let others live theirs. There's been too much of this fool business about living other people's lives for them, or letting other people live your life for you. Each man or woman must grow into an individual by his or her own work and life. There is no such thing as vicarious individuality. Don't be afraid to assert the I, to claim your rightful heritage and birthright to be an individual and not a parasite. And don't be afraid to shake off and trim off the parasitic persons that have encumbered your own unfoldment toward individuality. Let the parasites take root in the earth, just as you have done. Let them fasten their roots in the great body of strength and power instead of in the mental body of someone else. Let them stop their second-hand nourishment and learn to draw from the first source. This is the only way, and the lack of the knowledge of it is filling the world with weaklings instead of with individuals. Therefore, think of these things. Hold them well in mind when you make your statement of strength. I am a living electromagnet. End of Chapter 15. Recording by Sandra Knight.